Hi, I'm Michael Ricci along with Garrett, Clar, and welcome to another episode of the FL1 Sports Podcast on FingerLakes1.com and a special edition of our very own CR Sports Podcast. Today we'll be talking to one of the hottest up-and-coming sports broadcasters in the country. He's a 2019 alum from the Newhouse School of Communications at Syracuse University. He is the 2019 Jim Nance Award winner, an award that goes out to the best sportscaster in the country at the collegiate level. And he is a play-by-play broadcaster for ESPN, and he is Drew Carter. But before we get into the interview today, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's episode, GoNet Speed. The future of connection is here, and it's fiber. Made for how we live and work today, GoNet Speed fiber is faster and stronger than anything out there. Check availability in your area, as well as plans and pricing at gonetspeed.com, and get ready for fast and reliable fiber internet straight to your home. Drew, thanks for coming on today.
It's great to see you, fellas. I mean, this is amazing. You know what I did in high school? I wrote for the school newspaper. I had my own column called Swooping and Hooping with Drew, and I read the announcements on the newscast every morning. That's what I did. And here you guys are with this professional show. You have an intro. You have animations. You have Paul making the magic happen behind the scenes. I'm just saying, Jim Sinacropi, stay on the golf course, dude, because these guys, Michael and Garrett, have it figured out in the studio. You don't need to come back, Jim.
The new studio, it's beautiful in here. I don't know if you've seen it since the renovations, but wow, it's gotten a lot better compared to the old one. And we're just happy to have you on today, and we're excited to do this.
Well, it's great to see you guys, and thanks for bringing me on, and you're too kind. I mean, one of the hottest young sportscasters. I think that's the first time anyone's ever said that about me. When I was at Syracuse, I was one of the coldest young sportscasters, and I went there and I graduated in 2019, as you said, and it's been fun, but it's great to chat with the next generation, and again, I'm just so impressed by what you guys are doing at such a young age, so it's cool to be here.
Well, Drew, thank you. So the first question, I'll just start it off pretty generic. When did you know you wanted to go into play-by-play specifically and for sports broadcasting?
Well, it's a great question, Michael, because I really didn't know at a young age the same, I really wasn't like you guys are right now. I did not know I wanted to do broadcasting in high school. Like I said, I did some sports writing in high school, and I thought I wanted to do something in sports because I wasn't good enough to play sports professionally, so I figured I might as well try to make a living doing it somehow, staying around the games, because I really don't love anything other than sports like I love sports. I couldn't really see myself doing anything outside of it, so whether it was sports management or just something to stick around the game, that's what I wanted to do. So anyway, I did some research. I didn't know where I wanted to go to college. Like junior year of high school, I did this tour of the East Coast. Hit Syracuse, of course. I hit Ithaca. I think my calves grew like twice in size trying to walk up the hill at Ithaca. Went down the East Coast, ended up at UNC, toward like BCU, Richmond, saw a bunch of amazing schools. But I just fell in love with Syracuse, and it just felt like a really good fit. I also, love orange. It's always been my favorite color. When I was in preschool, actually, we had to make a book of shapes with different colors and different shapes. So you had some kids who were doing like green triangle, and you'd flip the page and it was blue square. Me, it was 10 straight pages of orange circle, which I guess kind of set the tone for me ending up at Syracuse. And I remember there was a time when I was watching a college basketball game my junior year in high school, and I was watching with my mom in our living room. I remember it like it was yesterday. CJ Fair was playing for Cuse. And my mom was like, that place looks pretty fun. Like, Carrier Dome, look at all those people in there, great basketball. Maybe that could be somewhere you end up. So after doing the research of best places to do journalism, because I thought I might want to be a writer, Syracuse kept coming up on every list. When I toured it, it was perfect. So I decided to go there, got in against all odds. I applied early decision. My grades were not very good in high school, so I'm still convinced there was some chicanery happening, maybe some bribery happening with my parents and the people at Syracuse. But I got in. And by the time I got accepted to Syracuse, I was like, this is all gravy at this point. I'm just happy to be in Newhouse. I don't know what I want to major in. I'm just happy to be going there. And so I ended up choosing the broadcast journalism major just because it seemed like it was the most prestigious. You hear about people who come through Syracuse. I mean, you guys know the names. Like Marv Albert, Marty Glickman was kind of the godfather for this. Bob Costas, Mike Tirico, the list goes on. So I'm like, all right, I'll go into that major. I'll write for the Daily Orange and just see what happens. I ended up meeting the sports director at WAER, Jay Alter, who now is my colleague at ESPN and who I just saw last weekend. And he told me to come out for the general interest meeting. And so at that point, I kind of fell in love with it, and the rest is history. But I didn't think I could do play-by-play through most of my freshman year, because the process at Syracuse is a little different from other schools where guys want to do broadcasting. It takes a while to get on the air. And so the first thing you do is write practice sports updates and read them on the radio. No one actually hears them. You just get advice from the older guys and some of the professionals at WAER. Then eventually you get on the air, but play-by-play is kind of the last step. And I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think my brain worked quickly enough, didn't have the voice for it. You know, all those myths that we tell ourselves, like imposter syndrome, I just didn't think I could do it. But a mentor of mine, Jason Benetti, who's another Syracuse alum and is the voice of the White Sox now, worked at ESPN for a while. He's now at Fox. He told me, hey, just try it. You know, go into a studio, go into a study room at Sadler Hall at Syracuse, open up your laptop and find a recording of a basketball game and just try it. I gave it a shot. He gave me great advice. We did that for basically the end of my freshman year, all of my sophomore year, and by the time that I was ready to do play-by-play at WAER and Z89, I felt like I was actually prepared for it. So basically, it all kind of happened by chance, and it's really, you know, the story of my career is just getting really, really lucky and meeting the right people.
So clearly you have like a long list of things that went in your way and how it set you up for getting a job eventually now at ESPN. But how did Newhouse prepare you, and has your approach changed throughout the years, and what have you really learned throughout your career so far?
Yeah, man, Newhouse, like I owe everything to Newhouse, and not just the school, but really the opportunities it provides. You know, on campus, I mentioned AER and Z89, Citrus TV, ACC Network Extra really started when I was a student there, so again, it goes back to getting super lucky. But when I left Newhouse, I realized that not everybody in the real world cares as much about this stuff as we do at Newhouse, and as much as you guys obviously do doing this podcast. You know, everyone at that school goes there with an idea of what they want to do. You know, even like me, I sort of had a general idea that I wanted to work in sports. And then by the time I left, I was kind of obsessed with sports broadcasting. When I got into the real world, my first job was in local news in Birmingham, Alabama. Never expected to live down there. I grew up in Minnesota. You can see, if you're watching, I have the Timberwolves ball back here, and I have lots of Minnesota memorabilia all over this place. So I grew up in Minnesota, went to school in Syracuse, so I'm from the Midwest, went to school in Northeast, and then I moved to Alabama, of all places. And I didn't expect to really like it. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I loved my 2 years down there. And that's a piece of advice I would give to any aspiring sports broadcaster, really anyone in any field, is don't judge a book by its cover. Don't say no to something before you really give it a chance. At least explore the idea of it. You don't have to say yes to everything. But I think that's a good lesson, is just give everything a chance. So I gave Alabama a chance, and I ended up loving my 2 years down there. But I did realize that, you know, for a lot of people, it is a job as opposed to a passion and something you view as your future and your career. And that took me a little while to adapt to. So I guess that's what changed from Newhouse to the real world. But now at ESPN, you know, it's the same kind of thing, because if you work at ESPN, you have to be maniacal and borderline diabolical about the craft and how much you love talking about sports and sharing your passion for sports with others. So I've kind of rediscovered that same atmosphere that I found at Newhouse, which I love so much.
Yeah, and Drew, you mentioned how your love for sports is so big and how you couldn't really envision a career not working in sports. You mentioned all you did in high school. What sports did you play in high school, and did you have a favorite?
I was a cross-country runner in high school, which is code for I'm not very coordinated and I'm not very athletic. My favorite sports growing up were basketball and I guess baseball and football, but I didn't hit my growth spurt until my senior year of high school. My dad is 6'6". Once upon a time, he was 6'7". He played football at Army. He was a right tackle. They weren't very good, but my dad was a starting tackle at Army, which is pretty sweet. My mom is actually probably the best athlete in the family. She played squash at Yale and was a national champion. So I don't know where those genes wound up, but not with me. My sister's a great runner. I was not that good, but I did run cross country in high school. And a big reason why I decided to stick with that is that the guys on the cross country team were like the best dudes, you know, and they had big goals even at that age. So I decided I wanted to stick around that crew. But yeah, I ran cross country in high school. I was not a very good athlete.
So, Drew, there's a wide variety of sports that you've had experience with throughout your life. Now, specifically for broadcasting, what sports have you called? I know you've called a lot. Which are your favorite to call? And just where have you gotten like inspiration for doing sports maybe you wouldn't care about in the first place, but you're able to call them?
Yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, I know I said earlier, like, you don't need to say yes to everything, but my idea in college was to do that. Say yes to everything and just get as much stuff under my belt as possible. And my whole goal in college was versatility. Because, again, I'm not a former athlete. You know, I'm not, you know, great looking. I'm not that remarkable in any sense aside from the fact that I, you know, call sports for a living. Like, that's basically my personality. So I knew I needed to set myself apart because there are a lot of people who want to do this. So I tried to do that by being as versatile as possible. So in college, I think I called 9 different sports, including field hockey, rowing. I did a rowing broadcast, which was actually really cool. I didn't do the play-by-play itself, but I did the hosting. And John Nicholson, who you'll meet if you end up at Syracuse, he did the play-by-play, and he was in a boat. I think they call it a boat. I don't know if it's the right terminology anymore. It's been a while since I did that broadcast, but he was in a boat behind the actual race calling the play-by-play. It was super cool. But then once I got in the real world, you know, I was covering sports in Alabama that I didn't really get the chance to cover all that much in college. I did a lot of soccer coverage in Alabama, which again kind of sounds counterintuitive. You think the only football they play down there is American football, but there is a minor league soccer team in Birmingham, which I did a lot of coverage of that. You know, I adapted basketball, wheelchair basketball at Alabama. They've got one of the best teams in the country. That was really neat to get involved in. And then lacrosse is the one that is now my favorite sport to call. It's my favorite sport to watch. I didn't know diddly poo, to quote Jim Mora, about lacrosse until I got to Syracuse. But as you guys know, being in that area, you kind of have to learn it because it's the main spring sport at Syracuse and really in central New York, the region. So once I got up there and I was sort of thrown into the fire with lacrosse, I just fell in love with it 100%. I think it combines so many different aspects of other sports. You think about hoops, you know, basketball's 5-on-5, set a pick, beat your man, draw a double team, find the open guy. Lacrosse is a lot of that, just 6-on-6 for men and 7-on-7 for women. Hockey, live substitutions. Soccer, obviously, they play on grass on a huge field. Football, it's physical. And then from a broadcasting perspective, I actually think there are elements of doing baseball where there's a lot of dead time where you can tell stories. You know, lacrosse before the shot clock, which thank God they added it. But even with the shot clock, you have a lot of time where they're kind of spinning the ball around, they're making substitutions, and you can tell stories. You have opportunities to talk about the landscape of the sport as a whole, or maybe tell a story about a player individually. And I just kind of fell in love with the art of broadcasting lacrosse, and I think that's a big reason why I ended up at ESPN. Because it's kind of a niche sport still. I think it won't be one day, hopefully, with what the PLL is doing and how much college lacrosse seems like it's exploding. Shout out to Garrett's Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the national champions this year. But lacrosse is really my favorite sport to do at this point, which is funny considering I didn't know anything about it in high school.
Yeah, certainly a sport we're familiar with growing up in upstate New York. Victor's had a lot of success in that sport. I know you're just sort of getting into your career as a very young sports broadcaster, but is there a moment that you can sort of pinpoint that was your favorite moment you've done so far?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it actually happened a few months ago. I got the chance to do this NHL broadcast, and hockey's another great example of a sport I don't have a lot of experience in, but I've gotten the chance to do it, and it's fun. It's fast-paced. It's hard, man. The names are long, and they don't possess the puck, and they're on there for 45 seconds, and they're off. But I got the chance to do an NHL game that was placed in the universe of this cartoon on Disney Channel called Big City Greens. And it was one of the coolest experiences, not just of my career, but of my entire life. Because what the NHL and ESPN were trying to do is appeal to a younger audience. And I've always said that, you know, the reason I do this, beyond the fact that I just love sports and probably couldn't do anything else, but the reason I do this is, you know, to enhance the experience for viewers and hopefully help other people fall in love with sports the way that I love sports and the way that we all do. And so to see some tweets come in of people saying, hey, my 8-year-old had never watched hockey before and now they love it because they love this show, it was really, really cool and really rewarding and fulfilling. And just to give you an idea, you're probably trying to envision what this broadcast looked like. All the players were animated. They all became cartoons. They placed a rink in the middle of what's called Times Circle. The whole premise of the show is a family from the farm, from the countryside. They move to the city to be with the family's grandmother, and they have to adapt to city life, you know? And so It's called Big City, where they live, and then Times Circle is where they played this hockey game. And so all the players were animated. We brought in this company from the Netherlands called Beyond Sports, stuff that's way above my pay grade, using tracking devices, the same thing that they use to track like shot speed and how fast players are skating and how much they're skating. They use that same technology to render them as cartoons, and then we put in some of the characters from the actual show playing in the game, replacing some of the real-life players. And it was just awesome. Like, we had the people who created the show and voiced the characters. They joined us. We, like, live interviewed them as the characters. I was amazed by these people and their improv skills and their performance. It was incredible. So I'd say that was probably the coolest thing I've done so far.
Yeah, so clearly with this career, you can be doing one thing one day and something completely different the next, like you just mentioned. So what does a typical day of work look like for you? And I know this obviously varies between seasons, but could you just break it down for us?
Yeah, so my role at ESPN is kind of different because, I do a bunch of different stuff for the company. And again, another reason why I feel like I work here is because of the versatility, which I tried to hone in college. But play-by-play, I would say, is my main gig, and then I do some studio hosting as well. I do some radio. I fill in there whenever they need me. So it kind of depends not just on the season, but really on the day. If I'm hosting in studio, say if I'm doing a Sports Center Australia, which has been another really cool opportunity, great accents. Like everyone we interview, I'm like, can you just talk for 30 minutes straight? Because I just want to hear the Aussie accent. But if I'm doing a Sports Center Australia, I'll go up to Bristol. I live about an hour away from campus, closer to the city. Go up to Bristol around noon. We'll have a Zoom, go over the show rundown. I'll try to hit the gym, because, like I said, not naturally athletic, so got to put the work in. I'm not like you youngsters. I can't just, roll out of bed, eat Doritos, and look great. Got to go to the gym because I'm kind of old now. Then, get changed, get some makeup, finish writing scripts, and then get into the studio. It depends on when the show airs, and, of course, that's in a different time zone. So it's really a morning show for them, but we do it at night. So it's like 6:30 or 7, we go live. So that's for studio. For play-by-play, it's different because, a lot of my job is just prepping. So it's kind of a lot of alone time, but it'd sort of be easy to go insane. So I try to inject some, interaction with other people because a work day for me, it could be like 8 straight hours of just sitting alone and prepping. Like I'm doing the PLL All-Star game this weekend. So a lot of my prep is actually, watching old All-Star highlights. I watched a Mikey Powell highlight reel from his time at Syracuse just before this. So it's a lot of prepping. Because, for those who aren't in the industry and might just watch the games and listen to the games, we don't just show up and talk. I think a lot of people think that's what the job is. It doesn't take a whole lot of legwork. It actually does. And, it's an amazing job and it's fun and it's definitely not difficult or hard or grueling work. But there is a lot of it, because you have to be an expert on everything you're talking about. You have to obviously know the rules. You have to know the backstories of the players. You have to know the landscape of the league. So it's a lot of prep for play-by-play, and then I find that if you are well prepared, doing the job is as fun as any job in the world, and it's as close to simulating playing in a real game as I think any job could be, because it's live, you don't get a do-over, you're following the action, it's 2.5, 3 hours, and then you go home and you unwind, and there's a lot of adrenaline involved, so yeah, for play-by-play, it's a lot of preparation, which leads to, by the time you get to the game, that's basically gravy because you put the work in and the hay is in the barn and you get to just have fun with it.
Yeah, and whether it's 10, 20, or maybe even like 30 years down the road, whether it's calling a Super Bowl, the Masters, maybe an NBA Finals game, is there just a dream game that you could call, dream job that you were like, this is what I want to do?
Ooh, I'd love to call a Victor High School Lacrosse State Championship. That could be really fun. T.D. Erlin played at Victor, by the way.
He did.
I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to see him in the PLL All-Star game this weekend. What a stud that guy is. Also a Vikings fan, by the way. Big Fran Tarkenton guy. Yeah, it's tough to say because I think the easy answer for everyone would be the Super Bowl. I mean, it has the most eyeballs. It's the biggest event in America. Really what I want to do, for maybe a more attainable goal right now is I'd love to do some Premier Lacrosse League playoff games. I love the sport and I love the league. I love what the Rabel brothers are doing. The quality of play is off the charts and every game is close. I mean, imagine if like the NBA or NFL had 8 teams. Think about how good those games would be and how close they would all be. So I love the PLL. I'd love to do some playoff games. And, of course, down the road, I'd love to do, high-profile events in every sport. I think the dream job for me is probably being the voice of a team in addition to doing the ESPN broadcasting. Because I think when you're the voice of a team, it's just a more intimate experience with the fan base. And, like I said, I think finding your purpose is really important in any career, but especially in this one where, I look around and, I look at my sister and it's like she works for a nonprofit in international development. I'm like, wow, that's a direct impact on other people. Me, I talk about sports for a living. So it kind of feels like it's insignificant sometimes. But then when you hear from people who like your work, or you hear that, you might have helped someone enjoy the game or taught someone something about the sport or someone involved in it, that's really special. And I think being the voice of a team is when you get the most opportunities to do that. So in a perfect world, guys, I would love to be the voice of a team. I don't know what sport that is, but that's definitely a goal of mine.
And Drew, I know you've called games for Syracuse football when you went back to the Dome. What was it, Syracuse versus Liberty, the first one? And then you opened up the season last year for Syracuse versus Louisville with Tim Hasselbeck. And I'm wondering if there's any key phrases that you got in there, because I remember you said orange is the new fast again, come up with like clever things and to say. And what's the feeling like, though, going back to your alma mater and then announcing a game for the Orange?
Well, first of all, Michael, I'm impressed with how much research you've done. And I apologize that you had to, look at me and hear my voice so much.
Oh, no, it was
you were
great.
Doing all this research. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I said orange is the new fast again. I think I probably referenced Fagans like 17 different times. It's at the point where I should be getting royalties from them. Although I did never lose a flip on flip night. So you guys don't know what I'm talking about because you're youngsters. But Syracuse alumni and people who go to Fagans know what I'm talking about. So I probably owed it to them, actually. But, yeah, going back to Syracuse was really, really special. I mean, it actually kind of hit me like a ton of bricks when I was at the Dome for the first time for that Liberty game, which was September 24th, 2021. And I didn't feel like I did a very good job on that game for a couple reasons. Number one, I was way too juiced up. Being back there, I probably called it like I was on student radio for the first half until I settled in and realized, like, hey, this is a national broadcast. Even though it's on ACC Network and there's only one ACC team involved here, we have to be fair. And that Liberty team, you might not remember, but that Liberty team was good. Like, Malik Willis was, at that point, we thought he might be the number one pick in the draft. And I think they were ranked the year before. They were undefeated or close to it, and they were really good. So I really... If I'm being honest, I was not playing it straight in the first half, and I had to fix that in the second half. Plus, if you go back and watch that, I'm sure I was just screaming and talking way too fast. I was just way too excited to be back. But, it's not a bad thing, right? I was stoked to be at my alma mater. But I also think I probably got bogged down with taking a trip down memory lane, like going to all my old favorite spots, seeing my old friends and mentors. And I sort of forgot that I was there to do a job, which is why I was really grateful to be able to go back and do the season opener last year, which I think went a lot better, and that was also really cool. And for the record, I think you can make the argument that Syracuse's two biggest wins in the last 2 years have been when I was on the call. So, John Wildhack, if you're listening, I know you got a lot of friends at ESPN, but get me back at Syracuse, man. Get me to the JMA Wireless Dome, because I'd love to do more Cuse football.
Yeah, I know you're a huge Cuse football fan, but with the Cuse basketball team hiring Coach Autry after this past season, what are your thoughts on the team's chances this season, not only in the ACC but also at the national level?
Well, I'm fired up because and I'm going to say we because I'm an alum, we stole J.J. Starling from Garrett's beloved Notre Dame. So that's exciting. And I think he's going to be great, playing with Judah. Judah is coming back, right?
Yes.
Okay, so those two guys in the backcourt, I think it has a chance to be maybe the best Syracuse backcourt since I was a student there. I think about Benajay and Cooney, and then the year after when we missed the tournament, but the team was still pretty good, Andrew White and John Gillen.
Yeah, that was a big Duke win, too.
Yes, a buzzer beater, too. Gillen at home, I remember that like it was yesterday, too. That was a crazy night. So I think the backcourt's going to be really good. I'm not sure what's going to happen at the 5, but I am excited about this new chapter of Syracuse basketball. I think Red's the guy for the job, and as much as it feels like it's going to be status quo, keeping Boeheim's top assistant, I do think some stuff's going to change. Like, he has said that they will probably play some man this year, which is going to be interesting. I've always thought that the great part of the zone is college athletes don't really know what to do against it. But I think that there's so much film available now, and the zone was the standard at Syracuse for so long that it might have started to become a little bit easier to crack. But if you mix it up, I mean, if you play some man, you zone, maybe throw in a full court press, maybe a matchup zone, I mean, just thinking about all those ideas gets me really excited because it actually isn't the status quo. So I'm fired up about this Syracuse basketball season, and I just hope that Syracuse fans, to their credit, it's as passionate a fan base as I've been around. And I spent 2 years in Alabama where, Bama football and Auburn football is religion down there. I always say it might as well be on your driver's license who you root for. I have brown eyes, I have brown hair, and I root for Alabama. Like, that's how important it is down there. And Syracuse is the same exact way with the basketball team. I think with that passion sometimes comes maybe unrealistic expectations or unfair criticism of the program because it's just everybody cares so much. I just hope that everybody gives Brad Autry a chance and, a couple years and patience is a virtue. But with that being said, I do think the team's going to be pretty good this year. At least I hope so.
Now, Drew, I got to mention the big accolade of winning the Jim Nance Award. You finished 10th in the placing your junior year, and then you
did
won.
Your research.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
And then
Check
your
the game notes.
And then your senior year, you won it. But Noah Eagle, who's a good buddy of yours, who was graduated in 2019 as well from Syracuse, he was the runner-up. So just walk me through that experience, and then obviously picking up the phone and hearing Jim Nance on the other end. What's that feel like?
That was pretty awesome, man. And I still can't believe it. You mentioned Noah. I'm still like 10% sure that Noah actually called the STAA people and said, hey, let Drew have this one. Noah's going to be fine. Maybe Ian Eagle called them and said, hey, let's just give Drew the award because Noah's going to do okay, and obviously he's doing amazing things. I just saw him in Vegas about a week ago. We were both out there for Summer League, and it was great to see him. We were roommates in college, and I think of him as one of my best friends. But winning the Nance Award, dude, like, that was bananas because I really didn't expect to win it. I mean, you mentioned I was 10th the year before. I submitted a reel my freshman and sophomore year and did not even sniff the list. I was like, all right. I mean, I guess I might as well try again. Junior year, finished 10th. That was encouraging. And then my senior year, it was always kind of in the back of my mind, but I tried to really not focus on the reel. And I tell people this all the time if they want to get into this industry, especially at a competitive place like Syracuse. Don't think about how you can make yourself look good every time you go on the air. It's easy to fall into that trap. Hey, I have this opportunity. I got to put down something sick for my reel. It's going to help me get a job. It's maybe going to help me win an award. It's easy to fall into that trap, and I still do sometimes. But the more you can think about, hey, how can I positively impact the audience today? How can I teach someone something? Maybe make someone smile, make someone think. It's like the Jimmy V speech. You laugh, you think, you cry. That's a heck of a day. We're not trying to make people cry every time we go on the broadcast, but definitely laugh and think and maybe learn something about the game. That's what I tried to focus on all through senior year. And I said, at the end of it, I'll put the reel together and let the chips fall where they may. And so when I saw Noah's name come up at number 2, I was thinking, I hope I'm number 1. I hope I didn't go from 10 to completely falling out of the ranks. And I remember watching the live show with my parents, and really that was the coolest part of it because they've been extremely supportive this entire time. Like, I grew up in Minnesota. They sent me to Syracuse. They've basically never told me no if I want to, live in Auburn, New York and do minor league baseball for a summer instead of coming home, or move to Cape Cod for a summer and do baseball instead of coming home. They've always been so supportive. So that was probably the coolest part of it because they got to see me win it, and then we all got to go to North Carolina together and go to this banquet, meet some of my heroes. Tony Kornheiser came up to me after this speech I gave, and he was like, that was a great speech. I'm like, dude, I love you. You're Tony Kornheiser. I was so nervous because you're in the audience. So it was just a whirlwind, man, and I'm still so grateful to STAA because they gave me something that has really, I think, catapulted me through the industry. I was just a college kid, and that gave me a little juice, and I think it's definitely helped me get here.
Well, Drew, thank you so much for coming on today. You're a huge inspiration. People are going to be hearing your voice on the TV for decades to come. And just thanks for joining us for this edition of the FL1 Sports Podcast. For all our latest headlines and local content on the FingerLakes1.com local network, visit our homepage, download our free Android and iPhone app, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and look us up wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts online. And on behalf of Garrett and myself from CR Sports, we'd like to thank Jim Sinacropi and the Finger Lakes 1 team for allowing us to come in here today and setting up this interview for us. It's a great opportunity. And Drew, thank you so much. And thanks for checking us out today. We'll see you next time, everybody.